Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Holistic Witch's Cottage. My name is Melissa, and I am the Holistic Witch. And today we will talk about the interconnectedness between some things, but I think today is mostly going to be a day of reflection for me. So, not too much to recap from the previous week. I've been doing a lot of work from home, and I'm pretty sure my listeners aren't too interested in hearing about the cataloging of many used books. Although I love books and books are wonderful, the clerical part of it can get a little tedious, so I will spare you from that. So, yesterday I was talking to hubby on the phone, and I usually start working on the podcast on Sunday, and I said I really didn't have a strong idea or topic, and he was brainstorming and giving me some suggestions, and I said, it's okay, something always comes up. I always get inspired, something will happen, and something did. So we'll go with that. So not much recap for this week. The spring weather is coming. The lilacs are starting to bud. I'm starting to notice some buds on trees. My columbine is up. Some of the other wildflowers are starting to come back. So, it's late March. We've still had a switch between warm weather and chilly weather, and this will go on for a while here. But it's lovely to see the resurgence of spring and some new birds. So in the fall, we had moved some things around. I've always had this Mary garden on the western side of the house, and we decided to move Mary to a safer spot. At least we hope it's a safer spot. And I'll need to rearrange some things. But I was pleasantly surprised over the weekend to hear some sounds outside that living room window, and I peeked out, and what I formerly called my Mary garden, which will just become an herb and perennial garden, was filled with doves and 2 cardinals. So what a beautiful, beautiful sign and a beautiful way to start the weekend. So that was very, very nice. So one of the topics of today's podcast will be the signs of spring, but just signs in general, divination and such. And I'll also do a little bit of reflecting about what it's like to be witchy, the witch wound, the woman wound, and things like that have been popping up on social media. So where to begin? So this is kind of cute. So I do a lot of writing online, and sometimes I claim it by, having my name or the Holistic Witch's Cottage on it. But other times I just write and don't claim it. And my son saw something, and he brought it to me, and he said, "Is this you? Did you write this?" And I smiled, and I said, "Yes." And he said, "I knew it was you because you sound like a character in a Terry Pratchett book." And I think that is maybe one of the best compliments I've received in a very long time. I would love to be a character in Discworld. My life is a little bit like a character in Discworld. I was recently accused of all this just being fake, that I just do this for likes and such. My life, I assure you, is not fake. It's just as mundane as others in many ways, but in many ways it is totally magical and totally witchy and totally weird and wonky, because I've always been like that. That's just my personality. From the time I was a young child, I was always fascinated by things that other people couldn't care less about. I don't do this because it's trendy. I've been doing this for over 50 years. So trends come and go, but weirdness and wonkiness is forever. And I am weird and witchy and wonky, and in some ways wonderful, and in some ways maybe not. But so let's go into the reflection a little bit. I was looking for some old resources, and those of you that follow me on the Holistic Witches Cottage, this is not my original group and page. I wrote many years ago under a different name. It was sort of a ghostwriter deal on a different platform, and the provider and purveyor of that platform kind of crumbled. So I moved to other places to do it. And I eventually started a group that was called the Christian Witches Cottage. And I did that for quite a while. It was very slow going, and then it grew like explosively. And it was an interesting experience. I still have some online friends from that experience. Many have drifted away. But I did discover a few things about people who claim the label of Christian witch or even Christo-pagan or somewhere on that spectrum. Some people are like me. They lean more towards universalism and witch as you wish, and however you blend things in your life and combine them as your choice. And then I ran into a lot of fundamentalism on that group. There's one way to be spiritual, there's one way to be religious, there's one way to worship, and somehow we are combining our witchiness into this, but most of them were strangely in the broom closet. And what I find odd about that is when people proclaim that they are in the broom closet on social media, you're really not in the broom closet, because nothing on social media is really secret, especially if you're using your real name. But there was that, and then of course there was the mix in between. But there were two things that I found extremely annoying on the original cottage group. One were the clear aesthetic witches. The ones that were clearly only in the trend to buy and sell. And I have no problem with people, marketing and vendors and stuff like that. But this was almost a fundamentalism of its own type that you could only purchase what they said, and everything else was fake and wrong. And over time, I learned that most of these girls really didn't believe in anything they were saying. It was all just about money making. So I didn't have much use for that. And then the worst one was the flip-floppers. These were mainly women, although there were a few men that did this, and they would mostly contact me by DM. Sometimes they would write on the main group or in the chats when Facebook still did that, but they mostly would contact me by DM, and they'd have a bunch of questions and they would want a bunch of help. And then something would happen that would shake their belief about something, and then they'd disappear for a while, or they'd lash out and disappear. But the worst is when they would give my contact information to a pastor or their father or a husband or whatever to ream me out about how do I want to say this? About introducing horrible ideas into their lives and breaking their psyches and stuff. And then they'd disappear for a while and then they'd come back. And I used to keep a tally sheet on these people, how many times they would disappear and then they would come back. And I had to create a 3-strike rule on it. Like, once this happened 3 times, I was blocking you because I just couldn't deal with the nonsense of it anymore. So one of the reasons I brought that up, one of those names reappeared using a different profile this week, and this individual wanted to explain to me the proper ways of being a Christian witch, or the proper ways of being a witch, and then she tried to sell me a book that she's working on. This was a person that was so afraid of her own exploration that honestly, I thought that she probably needed therapy, and now she's going to be the soothsayer and the truth teller to all. So I hope that she's resolved her issues, or maybe for the good green dollar, she's decided to jump on the bandwagon for a bit to make some money. But after and being the admin on that group for several years, and after the 2020 election, things started getting so weird. I decided to pull the plug on it, and I guess the 2024 election is when I pulled the plug on it. Sorry. And I took a break, and then people started reaching out. They still wanted what I do. So I started this other page. I did it in page format because I don't want to do the group thing again with it. And so I created the Holistic Witches Cottage. Now, people of the Christian witch perspective are certainly welcome, but other people are too. And I've enjoyed this so much more. So it's been like an interesting match up to see how like politics and what was happening in the world were affecting the groups and pages, and that still sort of happens today. So that was kind of neat. Now, the reason people think that I scrapped the original group. I archived it because I spent so much time developing the guides and the files that I'm certainly not going to scrap all that work. So I still have access to it, and my family still does. So the topic of divination came up last night and today, and I decided to go back into those archives of the original Christian Witches Cottage group to see if a file I created still existed. And it's actually, I have a very large file, but I just took a snippet from an old Wikipedia article. It's an alphabetical list of types of divination, and it still did exist, and it was still, I could still open it. So I did share it on the Holistic Witches Cottage page today. So as far as my rambling and reflecting on the old cottage, it just shows that like things change over time, and some of those people that were frequently contacting me have drifted away, but sometimes they drift back, and it's just interesting to see. For me, it's interesting. I'm like a big picture kind of person. It's interesting for me to see like how politics and how things affect that. So I checked something to see like the dates on when I got contacted, and some of it parallels like the No Kings rallies. So I'm not sure if people get like riled up in one way or the other during those No Kings days, those No King protest days, and come back and then disappear again. But it's weird, and it's a pattern I'm going to continue to watch. So that's it for my little reflection part of the week. So let's talk a little bit about divination, because this came up. Now, back in the day on the old group, like, I had posted many resources, but the aesthetic witches were like really into tarot, and tarot has never really been my thing. I have a deck of Star Trek novelty tarot cards, which I think are fun. I have a cheap deck from Amazon, which is like a beginner deck, and that was mostly just to help some people that were being scammed. And then I have an Oracle angel card deck with, I guess it is an Oracle deck, but it has angels on it. That's probably my favorite one right now, but I don't do tarot. That does not make me fake. That just makes me someone who's not interested in tarot. We should all witch as we wish, and tarot has never been my thing. That may change in time, but so far it hasn't. It just doesn't really resonate with me. But I do enjoy divination, and I do enjoy different types of divination, and tarot just isn't on the top of my list for that. So that topic came up again about aesthetics and types of divination, but that's why I went into the archives and dug out that old list of an alphabetical list of many types of divination. So let's talk a little bit about the main types that are popular. Clearly tarot's on there. And runes seem to be very popular, and OM, spelled OGHAM, it seems to be rebounding. It seems to be popular on certain groups again. But there are certainly other ways to do divination. I prefer the pendulum and board. Okay, that's probably my most successful one. But you can read signs in almost anything. So I was looking at that old list, and I don't have it in front of me. It's very long. But one was about reading patterns in dust. Another was reading bird flight patterns. Another was reading, it's similar like to tasseomancy or tasseography. That's tea leaf reading. Yesterday I made a big batch of dough to make pizza dough and some biscuits for the dog and stuff like that. There is a form of divination where you can read dough. You can read the dried up dough, the dough that sticks to your bowl. I use like a big ceramic bowl when I do bread dough or sourdough. Either way, I didn't do sourdough yesterday. I just used yeast. But there is a method to reading the dough patterns in your bowl, and there's also a method of divination if you use a flour board or just put flour on parchment or wax paper like my mom used to do. Sprinkling your flour on your surface to roll out your dough. There's also a form of divination of reading patterns in the flour. What I find interesting about all this is that in times of the witch burning times, the witch wound times, in times of political adversity, people who practice folk magic or practice different types of spirituality always seem to find a way. Even if your tools are taken away, even if you are in the BC or you are in private, people have always found a way to connect with their spirituality. And if your spirituality includes any kind of divination or prophecy or contacting guides or spirits, people have always found a way. So, tarot's popular, other trinkets are popular, but people have always found a way to find signs and read signs. So I learned a couple new ones last night, so I want to share. So like Mahjong, the game, I play it on AARP free games from time to time. I love Mahjong Dimensions more than just the tile game. But I looked more into reading Mahjong tiles as a form of divination. I'm not sure this is something I'm going to outright pursue and learn how to do, but I thought it was interesting, and it's just another system, and I found that cool. So I'm always discovering new systems of magic, new systems of divination, and new systems of divination. They're of just interconnectedness. Some are connected to cultures and some are not. But reflecting upon like people using the tools that they have, that's why like AI is becoming popular now as a divination form, which I have some mixed feelings about. But I get it. It's easy. It's easy to just ask your phone and get a response. But I see it as the resilience of people. People have always used what they have. People are depending more on technology than perhaps reading flower or reading the number of seeds in a sunflower or reading the clouds or reading the ripples on the water. People are resilient, and people find a way to connect to that inner spirituality, that part of themselves that connects to nature, that connects to the universe. And I find that kind of fascinating, the different systems that developed over time, and the different types of systems, the new types of systems that develop now. And I wonder how much that will change and grow in the future. So I found the Mahjong tile thing interesting. I may delve into that a little bit more. Going back to the old group, I had shared some information. Now, I live in a state where there are old fortune-telling laws on the books. So there are people that do sell readings in my state, but you have to use that for entertainment only. Disclaimer. I don't sell readings. My thing is more teaching people how to do their own stuff so they're not taken advantage of in the future by bad actors, etc. But be aware, there are some states, there are some places where divination, tarot, etc., readings for profit may be illegal, so that's something to be aware of. But so I had a firm rule about I didn't want people doing readings on my old group because I live in a state where, that's not okay. Because they were trying to charge, and I didn't like that they were using my platform to do that. But there is a form, it's just cartomancy, using playing cards, that one of the easiest ways to read is to assign a system. So with playing cards, you can assign systems similar to tarot, but you can also do yes and no's with playing cards. So black cards could be a no, red cards could be a yes. Number cards could be a no. The suits, Jack, Queen, King, Ace, and Jokers could be a yes. Divination is only limited by your imagination. You can create your own methods. You can create your own systems. And I would encourage anyone who's interested to play with creating your own methods and methodologies, because that's just fun and cool. I had played around with reading Uno. It freaked a few people out. They asked me where I learned to do it, and I said I made my own system based on colors, color magic, and numerology. And they thought it was weird, and then they said it was fake because it wasn't tarot. So I guess I'll sum this up by saying which as you wish, and never be limited by the beliefs and judgments of others. If you want to create your own thing, if you want to create your own system based on previously existing systems, or create a new system, then do that. Which as you wish, and never be limited by the negativity of others. So Momo the Wonder Dog has shown up. Jingle for the peeps, buddy. Momo the Wonder Dog has shown up, and it's probably time for potty time for Momo. I will do a second podcast this week. I am very aware that Easter is just around the corner. Let's put it that way. Easter is just around the corner. I'm going to dig into my old Slavic cookbook. I've talked about this before. I'm going to pull out some old recipes, some Slavic cultures, divination, and Easter spirituality. Whether you practice any type of Christianity or not, the cultural stuff is just cool. And I will share that probably on Thursday, if all goes well. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, look for connections. Never be afraid to develop your own systems. Never be afraid to work outside the box. Blessings on your journey, and have a wonderful week. Any comments, Momo? No, I'm just looking for biscuits, Mom. Blessings on your journey. Bye-bye.